All right, so I'm talking with Devo Spice and Aaron Gulyas as we discuss Doctor Who. And Aaron, why don't you tell people what you've done book-wise with Doctor Who?
Okay. I've written a small small sort of very manageable, almost sort of I like to think of it as sort of thick fanzine sort of sized thing called In Fandom's Shadow, and it's sort of a fanography, fan biography of the my changing feelings about Doctor Who from when I started watching it and through sort of the historical changes that took the show, especially through the sort of horrible '90s period when there was nothing on TV except for Paul McGann for about 75 minutes. More scholarly and professional stuff. I've written a chapter about differing fan reaction to the 1996 Paul McGann movie and Rose, the first episode of the 2005 revitalized series, in a scholarly collection called Doctor Who in Time and Space, edited by Gillian Leach. And I've just got a chapter getting ready to go into another book edited by Gillian and another scholar named Sherry Jin on Doctor Who companions in Doctor Who companions in print, I guess is the best way to summarize it. Both companions who were created for the original novels during the 1990s and how traditional television companions had their characters changed, altered, and expanded on in the print world as opposed to the television world. So that's and a few conference presentations and some things like that.
All right, and Devo, you've obviously a big fan. You wrote an entire concept album about Doctor Who.
I did. For the people who may not know me, I do comedy rap. I bill myself as the redheaded stepson of Weird Al Yankovic and Eminem. And when the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who came along, I was like, I really want to do something with this. So I decided to put out a Doctor Who concept album. And what I did was I did one song per incarnation of the Doctor up through Matt Smith, and then the title track, I Am the Doctor. And I put that out last year, or actually technically earlier this year. It was supposed to be out for the 50th. I didn't quite make it, so it was out in early 2014. So it was a couple months late.
And you actually have some companions on this, don't
I
you?
have a doctor on there too.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, I missed
I
that.
have Peter Davison on the Fifth Doctor song. He appears at the very end, and I have Katie Manning, who played Joe Grant opposite the Third Doctor, and I have Sophie Aldred, who played Ace opposite the
Oh,
Seventh
cool.
Doctor. So
Nice. All right, and this you've done other Doctor Who songs before this, haven't you?
just one. I did when the show actually right before the show came back. I did a song called Welcome Back Doctor, which was a parody of a song called Welcome Back by Master Ace, I think. No, not Master Ace. Master P. One of those master rappers, I don't know. And it was a kind of a failed experiment because the thing was that was supposed to be Master P's big comeback anthem, and I heard it on the radio and they were hyping it like crazy, and I was like, all right, I got to parody this song. It's going to be huge, and it bombed. It went nowhere. So the parody as a parody kind of fell flat, and then what he did was he sampled the Welcome Back Cotter theme, and he had like a children's chorus sing it. So now I have to try to recreate this sound. And I got in touch with a local children's chorus, the Sussex County Children's Chorus here in New Jersey, and they agreed to sing on the song. And then they found out it was a rap album, and they wanted nothing to do with it, and they pulled out at the last minute. So I ended up hijacking my boss's kids, who were like 6 and 8 at the time, to sing on the song, and neither of them could sing. So the song was just a hodgepodge of comedy of errors. But I put it out, and it came out okay. But when the show came back proper, I decided to do the what became the title track of the album, "I Am the Doctor," because I needed a better song than "Welcome Back, Doctor." So, and then that led to the concept album.
All right. Well, let's start with Aaron. How did you originally get into Doctor Who?
Okay, it's kind of weird. I had this sort of weird proto Doctor Who experience, and I don't even remember what year it was or how old I was, but I think I was probably around 10 or 11, and I was watching TV, And it was a Sunday afternoon, and I was flipping through channels, all four of them that we had, and I saw some green slime oozing out of something and a bunch of ape men running around. And I know now that it was Inferno, the Pertwee story from season 7. But all I knew at the time was there was this green slime and volcanoes and guys were running around, and I thought it was pretty cool. And our PBS station apparently showed it in its complete unchopped up, completely sort of movie format, which, if listeners know, Inferno was a 7-episode story in the old system, which means it was about 2 hours and 45 minutes. And I just sort of sat there, and this took my whole afternoon. And finally, my parents said, "Look, we got to eat supper. You got to turn this thing off." And I'm like, but there's ape men and green slime. So I had no idea what this show was until I saw it later and had this kind of flashback. I guess as far as actual sort of week to week, I can't miss this show. It was probably January of 1991, and I was looking at the TV listings, and the little summary said, "Doctor Who. The Doctor and Ace visit a Victorian mansion where aliens in the cellar plot to kill Queen Victoria." And it was Ghostlight. And
Mhm.
that's like the worst description of Ghostlight I can imagine. It
Yeah, I was
nothing.
thinking that doesn't sound like Ghostlight.
It's like so I was like, well, this sounds like something I need to be watching. So I watched it, and it was great. I couldn't understand more than about half of what Sylvester McCoy said. And I thought Sophie Aldred was gorgeous, so I watched the next week, and the week after that, and there's something that just drew me to it, because it was, and this is what Doctor Who does best, and when Doctor Who ever veers from this, it goes wrong. It was a different show every week. You did not know what kind of story this was going to be. It went from Victorian England to Curse of Fenric was World War II, and then Survival was this sort of modern day suburban London thing. And then the week after Survival, they recycled back to the John Pertwee stories, and I don't think I've ever been that confused by television in my entire life. That one week it was, basically the same level of visual quality that I'd been watching on. I was already watching Red Dwarf, so late 80s British science fiction visual quality made sense to me. And then we were back in Spearhead from Space, and then the next two stories were only in black and white at that point. The color prints weren't around yet. And it was, so that sent me off to, hey kids, if you're listening, this is what we used to have to do. I went to the library and tried to find books, and I found some the really bad ones were these sort of giant, you guys might remember these encyclopedic, like encyclopedic encyclopedias of science fiction television, and there'd be like 3 lines about Doctor Who, and it only went up to like Tom Baker, which really confused me. But what really got me into it, as much as watching the show, was I discovered that the library where I lived had probably 30 or 40 of the Target novelizations. So I was able to get those and read those. And I discovered a place out of Chicago that had like every back issue of Doctor Who magazine. So I'd save up my money and had my mom write a check, and I'd mail in my order, and I'd get a couple Doctor Who magazines back whenever I had the money. So I very quickly found that I really liked the show, but I also liked learning about the history of the show. So the bad thing about it is, because of when our station broadcast Doctor Who at that point, which was Saturday nights, I switched my youthful TV allegiance from Twin Peaks to Doctor Who, and I sort of missed out on most of Twin Peaks because of that. But I think it was a worthwhile trade.
Well, you can always catch up now.
Yeah, that's true. I heard the Blu-ray is incredible. So
And they're bringing it back.
yes.
So Tom, Devo, how did you get into Doctor Who?
Slightly similar story. I remember I was sitting in my father's recliner flipping through the TV guide, because before the internet, we had this magazine that came out every week that would tell you what was on television. And I happened to check out the grid listing, and it said on the PBS at 7:00 Doctor Who. And I just glanced past it, and I didn't think anything of it. And I'm flipping, and I go, let's see what's on tomorrow night. And I'm looking through the thing, 7:00 Doctor Who, and I'm like, what the hell is this Doctor Who? So my father happened to walk in. I'm like, Dad, have you ever heard of Doctor Who? And he goes, no, what's that? I'm like, I have no idea, but it's like on every night. And he goes, oh, all right, whatever. Well, unbeknownst to me, he went upstairs and watched it. And then he came back down at 7:30 and he was visibly excited. And he goes, Tom, did you watch Doctor Who? And I'm like, no, should I have? Me thinking, I mean, I'm like 10 years old thinking I was in trouble. I was like, yeah, why? What about it? He's like, I don't understand, but there's a guy with a scarf and there's monsters and aliens and there's a blue box and it's a time machine and it's bigger on the inside. Just watch it. So the next night we watched, we watched the next part of that episode because my PBS station serialized it throughout the week. So every day at 7:00, we got another 20-minute episode. And we were pretty much hooked ever since. And then, so I started looking, I looked further in the TV guide and I saw that, on Saturday night, they're showing 2 hours of Doctor Who. I'm like, maybe they're showing a whole story. Cool. Well, that was a John Pertwee story. Now, we had been watching Tom Baker. Now, all of a sudden, it's John Pertwee as the Doctor. And my father and I looked at each other. We're like, what the hell's happening here? Because it's black and white. There's completely different people. There's the TARDIS. The TARDIS is still there. So it's definitely the same show. But we were like, well, maybe this is like a James Bond thing where they just, switch actors out now and then and don't ever talk about it. But eventually we saw Tom Baker regenerate into Peter Davison and then we were like, oh, okay. And then when the 20th anniversary of the show came along, my father picked up one of those big Doctor Who encyclopedias. It was like, I think it was called 20 Years of Time and Space or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And it had like the history of the show up through then. And it had like a list of all the episodes. And that was how I discovered that a lot of the episodes of the old show were missing because, it listed all the episodes and it said episodes 2, 3, 5, and 7 missing. And I'm like, what do you mean missing? What missing? So that's how I got into Doctor Who. And I've kind of been hooked ever since.
And you've written a song about those missing episodes that you did a video for.
I did write a song about those missing episodes.
So maybe we should hear that now. It's called Lost in Time. And the video is found on YouTube?
It is.
All right. So let's hear that.
Destroy the Doctor faster than the BBC can. Cause the faceless ones at the top decided to erase all the tapes and clean shot. The Makra terror was no match for the fury from the deep recesses of the BBC, who decided to reuse the tapes at a staggering pace, revolving round like a wheel in space. The invasion on the archives was a pity. To me it feels like they erased my wedding video. Now I'm gripped in a web of fear that they may never reappear, and I'll have missed Deborah Watley's career. Now fanboys are on the crusade to try to find them, and they won't stop till every story is behind them. It's like they're returning crown jewels to the throne. It's a mission to the unknown. Lost in time. I met Deborah Watling at a con once. Lost in time. Before I had ever seen a single episode with Victoria. Lost in time. Talk about awkward dinner conversation. Lost in time. The savages at the BBC didn't want us to see what their team of myth makers had undertaken. They were mistaken, the episodes were forsaken, and their reign of terror was unshaken. Now it's up to the smugglers to try to bring them back and complete the collection. In my rack I need to fill in the gaps for my favorite show, but they could be on a moon base for all we know. Will they ever again be shown, man? I don't know, man. They're harder to find than the abominable snowman. Hopefully we may see them all once more in the future while I play Mario Galaxy 4. The Highlanders fought a whole war in the kilts. I want to know how they do that on a family show. And I like the way Patrick Troughton frolics when he faces the evil of the Daleks. Lost in time. Marco! Whoa! Lost in time. Marco! Whoa! Lost in time. I'm sorry, I can't find you guys anywhere. I give up. Lost in time. Now the show is a hit, so what are we gonna do with it? Right away, when we're through with it, nothing else to do since the show is no longer new. And the Avengers too, it's a popular show, but now the episodes have to go. Cause the future doesn't need to know.
Perhaps this was a mistake. I'm find an old Doctor Who episode, please return it to the BBC. Our bad.
Every Christmas I ask the celestial toy maker, can you blame me for new episodes with Zoe and Jamie? I keep hoping the space pirates will bring them all back so I can see the underwater menace attack. The wiping of the tapes was worse than the massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, and I'm cursing that it has occurred, and even the power of the Daleks couldn't stop it, and now we can't even Photoshop it. Scientists have actually found a real 10th planet. Somehow that was easier, but I don't understand it. They'll probably find real ice warriors too before my missing Doctor Who.
Lost in time.
97 episodes of Doctor Who are missing.
Lost in time.
26 stories are missing or incomplete.
Lost in time.
But the world is never going to lose a single episode of Honey Boo Boo.
Lost in time. Lost in time.
All right, that was Lost in Time from Devo Spice off his Doctor Who. What's the name of the album? I Am the Doctor.
I Am the Doctor, yes.
And it has a great hologram cover.
Yeah, it's a lenticular print cover where I tried to simulate the opening of the show with, traveling through the time tunnel. And so it's a three image scene with I have this Doctor Who Devo Spice parody logo. So you see that logo, and then you see my face, and then it says I Am the Doctor. So you move it back and forth, it kind of looks like the opening of the show.
And it's really cool. So why are there lost episodes?
Well, the BBC at the time was on a very, very tight budget, and apparently videotape is extremely expensive. And so what they would do is they would record the show, air it, make copies for all the stations that syndicated the show, and then they reused the tape. And to make matters worse, when they sent the copies to the other stations around the world, they were sent with explicit instructions to destroy the tape after the show airs.
Oh.
So the fact that we've gotten any of these episodes back is kind of a miracle, because they're not supposed to exist.
Yeah, and one of the things that I didn't know about the reason why there's missing episodes, all that's absolutely the way it was. One thing I learned by reading Tatwood and Lawrence Miles's series of guidebooks, the About Time series. I don't know if you're familiar with them. It examines every story in the context of British culture and politics at the time, which is it's like thousands of pages. But one of the reasons why they felt like they didn't have any reason to keep this stuff around, it was the cost of the videotape. That's absolutely true. And it was also the fact that the agreement with the actors unions, the Screen Actors unions in Britain, meant that up until the late 1970s, early 1980s, I believe, there was no actual legal way the BBC could broadcast reruns outside of the season in which the episodes were shown. Or there was some sort of regulation like that. And there's also, just within the Doctor Who production office for a very long time, a complete sort of forbiddenness to showing or really making much mention of the show outside of whoever the current Doctor was. So you might have reruns from that season happen, but there was never any sort of idea that we would go back and see, previous things. I think the first time they did that was after Logopolis, when Baker regenerated into Davison. There was a very, very long break before the Peter Davison stories started up, almost a year, like a full calendar year or so. Mm-hmm. And so they had this event called the 5 Faces of Doctor Who, where they broadcast a story from each one of the Doctors. They kind of cheated because their Davison entry was the 2 seconds of Davison at the end of Logopolis, which is really kind of a ripoff, but he hadn't really done anything yet.
Yeah.
And if you look at what was available in 1981 for them to show, it's just kind of sad. I'm trying to remember. It was they had to be 4-episode stories, so that left out a lot of good stuff. So I think they showed Unearthly Child, which just makes sense.
Yeah.
For Troughton, I think that it was the Crotons.
Okay.
So if you've seen the Crotons, oh
yeah,
my gosh,
I have.
Oh god. The Quarks, oh my god, the Quarks. But that was the
most
only
impractical robots ever.
Yeah, but it was the only 4-part Troughton story that existed at the time. Tomb of the Cybermen wouldn't be found for decades. And then
Mind Robber was more than 4.
Mind Robber was 5 episodes,
Oh,
and
okay.
so
Oh,
was
they
the Dominators.
couldn't squeeze that in.
So
Right.
that wouldn't work. And for Pertwee, I think it was Carnival of Monsters, which is awesome. And because if they used the Day of the Daleks, I think they probably would have had to pay Terry Nation money or something.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to see Death to the Daleks anyway, because it sucks. But and then for Baker, I think Logopolis was their Baker entry too. And out of all the Baker stories, why pick anyone from any of that season when you've got Pyramids of Mars right there? But
Yeah.
but yeah, so there's sort of weird, obscure union rules about why they just didn't think they'd need these episodes, and of course, home video players didn't exist either. So
That's what I was just going to mention. The other reasoning behind this thing that I heard was that once the BBC aired the show and sent it off to syndication, there was no other way for them to make money on that episode ever
Right.
again until home video came along, and then all of a sudden they were like, "Wait a minute, we can make money again." And then all of a sudden they started trying to get the episodes back, and it's been a mad scramble ever since.
And even that was this convoluted bureaucratic nightmare, because they had to create BBC Worldwide, which was the commercial arm of the BBC, because the BBC as a public broadcaster wasn't allowed to make money. So they had to set up a separate corporation to exploit BBC properties in order to make money. And as a result of this, all the money that Doctor Who made through merchandising, videotape sales, books, all of it just went back into the general BBC budget, which is why no matter how much money Doctor Who made for the BBC, their budgets always just sort of got smaller.
Yeah.
Which is just...
I was wondering about that.
really
That makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. It's all socialism's fault. So
How come we have any old Doctor Who if they normally erase them and were told to destroy them?
Pure luck. A lot of the stations just forgot to throw them out. And so every so often they'll come across a stash of them. Sometimes they were illegally sold to private collectors. I believe Tomb of the Cybermen was found in possession of a private collector.
yeah, I think it was in Hong Kong.
Yeah, it was somewhere in Asia. I was trying to remember whether it was Japan or where, but I heard a story. I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard stories that when the BBC heard that they had found Tomb of the Cybermen, they sent a BBC representative over there with a briefcase that was handcuffed to his arm to bring it back.
So did the BBC have any of them at one point?
I don't know.
Yes. Yes. There were some episodes that were kept as for various reasons. Unearthly Child, the first story was kept because it was the first one. There were others. I can't remember all of the ones that were kept, but there were some that were kept if an episode used some sort of innovative production technique, or had something kind of unique about it. It would generally be held onto. Producers could designate stories or episodes that they wanted to be saved as evidence of stuff they'd done. Same thing with directors if they wanted footage for a promo reel or for like a resume or something. I think from what I've read, if this is accurate, that's the only reason we have the Web Planet is because those costumes and the bizarre set and all of the weird choreography in the Web Planet, that Hartnell story, it was strange enough that it was kept as sort of reference material for the first time some of this stuff was done. So there were exceptions to the junk everything rule. And that's why we have some episodes of some stories and not complete stories in a lot of cases. We don't need all, 6 episodes of whatever, because, episode 3 has the footage that we need for our archival purposes.
All right, well, let's hear something else from your CD,
Okay.
Devo. Why don't you pick? What song should we hear?
Oh, let's do the Regeneration, just because it has an awesome cameo by Sophie Aldred, and she was so great to work with.
All right, did you just contact her to see if she was interested?
Yeah,
or?
I contacted a lot of people from Doctor Who, and to just to try to. Okay, let me back up a little bit. I was booked to perform at a convention in 2012 where Sylvester McCoy was going to be a guest. And the convention emailed me and said, hey, Sylvester, me and one of the other musicians performing, and said, hey, Sylvester wants to do something with you guys during opening ceremonies. And I'm like, a doctor wants to perform with me? Twist my arm, why don't you? Okay. So I was like, so I emailed the con, and I was like, hey, do you think we can record whatever we're doing and then I could use it on my album? Because then I'd have a doctor on my album and it would be amazing. And they ran that past Sylvester and he was fine with it. And then unfortunately he had to cancel at the last minute. So he canceled. Peter Davison replaced him. So that's how I managed to get Peter Davison on the album, because I was performing at this convention where Peter Davison was. And so when they announced the substitution, I contacted the con again and I'm like, hey, can you talk to Peter, see if we can arrange something for the show? Well, they talked to him 5 minutes before opening ceremonies when we were going on stage. So I don't know whether he felt backed into a corner or not, but he agreed to do it. So I have the recording. Then once I got him on the song, it was easier to approach other people. I also have a brief history with Katie Manning, because I performed at a convention where she was the MC. And she remembered me because she introduced me as Dr. Demento once, rather than saying I was on Dr. Demento. So she remembered that. And then once I got her, I just started contacting other people. And I did get turned down by several of the actors. A couple I was never able to contact. But Sophie Aldred, I approached her through her voice acting agent. And she loved the whole concept for what I was doing and the song and everything. And she was absolutely fantastic to work with.
All right. Well, here's The Regeneration from Devo Spice.
That affects your ways, and when you do it, you'll be feeling the effects for days. But hey, there's really nothing to it. Just listen to my verse, and you can learn to do it and be a whole new person. Trust me now. Have I ever led you astray? It's really easy to do if you're from Gallifrey. If not, well, it may take a little practice, but don't panic yet. Let me tell you what the act is. First, you have to get hurt, like a lot, like attacked by the Ronnie, or perhaps you got shot. Then you step to the left or stagger to the right. Throw your head back and flip up a yellow light. Come up with something witty if you can and such. Just try not to freak out your companion too much. Then you're doing the new dance and sweeping the nation. Everybody do the regeneration. You're all done, you should be a whole new man or woman or cheetah or whatever you can. Then you'll have another lifetime. Now how does that sound? So you can try not to screw it up the 7th time around. That means more time to find people to assist, more time to find the hand of Omega or Nemesis, more time to wonder where you left your car keys last, and more time to torment your young friend about her past. You can learn to do it if you think you can. Like if you need to hide from your Uncle Wink again, or if you got a crazy ex that won't leave you alone. Just rearrange your DNA and change the number on your phone. Do it one time, I guarantee you'll be amazed. Throw your hands to the side and act like you're being tased. It's the hot new dance craze that's sweeping the nation. Everybody do the regeneration.
I love this new dance, Professor, but I have a question.
Yes, what is it, Ace?
Is it safe?
Well, of course it's safe. Whatever do you mean?
Well, with my backpack.
Ah, yes, of course. Well, Ace, if I were you, I would remove the nitro.
Oh, I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Some people can't do it, but they want a new life. So they cheat their way through it and go under the knife. Sharon Michael Jackson couldn't possibly look weirder. And now there's no way that we can save the cheerleader. Mel knows how to do it, and so does Ace. But stand back, cause she's likely to blow up the whole place. But she can give a demonstration and show you how it's done. So get on the dance floor and tear yourself a new one. Fade in and out and swirl around and around. Grab your chest like Red Fox and make a wheezing sound. Then heat up your body temperature to 500 Kelvin. And you can It'll fix you up with such a smooth touch, but your fashion sense probably won't improve much. It's the hot new dance craze that's sweeping the nation. Everybody do the regeneration.
All right. So, what happened to Doctor Who? When did it go off the air originally?
There's a couple different stories. So let me tell the story that I remember.
Okay.
I want to say 1985 or 86. The show was quote unquote canceled. This was when Colin Baker was the Doctor, and the BBC just said, okay, that's it, we're done, no more Doctor Who. And there was an amazing outpouring from the fans. They got tons and tons of letters, demanding that the show be brought back. And the BBC, after some time, backpedaled, and they said, okay, no, we didn't really cancel the show. We just kind of put it on hiatus. We want to make some changes to the show, keep it fresh, And the only thing they changed was they fired Colin and they brought in Sylvester McCoy. Now, I got that story directly from Colin Baker at a convention. I know that's not the official story of what happened, but that's the story I heard from Colin. And then eventually they ran Sylvester for like 3 years, and then eventually they said, all right, enough of this. Mm-hmm. So, Aaron, what were you going to say?
Yeah, that's generally the pattern. From what I've read, the 85, 86 hiatus and cancellation, it was there were a number of factors. One was declining ratings. I think they were doing 45-minute episodes instead of 25 that season, and the first
that
Colin
was
Baker
also
season.
the Trial of a Time Lord. So you had a season-long story arc that people just couldn't keep up with.
Right, and so that was Colin's second season, and that was after the hiatus. So they have his first full regular season, the hiatus, and then Trial of a Time Lord, which was, just it was a season-long story that was actually 4 individual stories, unless you looked at it funny, and then it was one story, except when they said it wasn't. But his first season, for example, I don't know the figures off the top of my head, but the 2 episodes of Attack of the Cybermen, which was the first season story in that season, he had regenerated into Colin Baker in Caves of Androzani, which was actually the last story of the previous season, which was weird. And so the ratings dropped almost in half between the first episode of Attack of the Cybermen and the second episode of Attack of the Cybermen, and it never came back, really, from that point. And so ratings were part of it. The show had become a little more violent, a lot less humorous, and the BBC higher-ups didn't like that. But one of the big reasons was money. They axed Doctor Who and then said, oh wait, no, it's just temporary. It's just we're resting it. But they canceled quite a few shows because they needed money to start up a new daytime broadcasting initiative. So basically, from what I understand it, and I'm no accountant, what they sort of did was they kind of moved Doctor Who to a different part of the fiscal year budgeting process and cut the number of episodes to just 14 25-minute episodes, and it was that way for Trial of a Time Lord and all of McCoy's stories. And then after McCoy's 3 years, they really didn't know what to do with it. They'd put it on Monday nights, thinking nobody watches Coronation Street and Doctor Who. Coronation Street was this, very popular soap opera. And actually that's not entirely true demographically. There were lots of people who watched both, but now they had to choose, and they chose the soap opera. And then there was another thing going through the BBC at the time that was sort of a Margaret Thatcher-y conservative Britain sort of thing, which was the BBC being required to outsource a certain percentage of their programming. So the BBC was looking for ways to offload programs onto other production companies, and they assumed that's what was going to happen with Doctor Who, but they weren't sure they wanted to do it. And then, if you were paying attention in the 90s to some of this stuff, you see lots of references to a Doctor Who film being made. Dudley Moore is going to be the Doctor. David Hasselhoff's going to be the Doctor.
Oh dear God, I didn't heard
Yeah, I
that.
know. Who another one? Elliot Gould is going to be the Doctor. You know, they had all these stories, and the BBC for a while was like, well, if the movie's going to get made, let's hold off on TV so we aren't competing with the films unit. And there were just all of these different things that kept putting off bringing it back until they just said, well, now it's been too long, we can't bring it back. So it just sort of fizzled out. The Doctor Who production office kept running. The producer kept coming in. The staff kept coming in for about a year after that last season, until the BBC said, well, you can all just stay home because we don't know. We aren't really sure what we're doing with this yet. So it wasn't like a big, massive climactic finale or anything. It just didn't come back one year.
And then they did do that one movie.
Oh,
yeah, they did, didn't they?
And what was the story with that?
Okay, have you seen the Michael Bay Transformers film?
Unfortunately, yes.
That's kind of what happened to Doctor Who.
The only thing I can say about the 96 TV movie with the Pertwee logo and Paul McGann is that it could have been much, much worse.
Sure.
Most of
Okay,
the
I'll
original
give you that. Yeah.
most of the original plans were to completely reboot it with the Doctor and the Master being brothers, and the whole series, if it got picked up for a series, the whole series revolving around the Doctor rebelling from Time Lord Society to go and look for his lost father, whose name was Ulysses. And yes, that's right. And that it was the Daleks were going to have been created by Davros, who was a mad Time Lord scientist, and it was a mess. Everything was all Joseph Campbell Hero's Quest stuff, which doesn't work in Doctor Who because the Doctor Who is the wise figure. He's not the young man. That's the thing. And everyone wants to redo Doctor Who in the 90s as this sort of Star Wars-like Hero's Quest, and they keep thinking the Doctor's Luke Skywalker, but the Doctor's Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
And they never really picked up on that. So the fact that we got an actual, in-series regeneration from Doctor 6, Doctor 7, Doctor 7 to Doctor 8, the fact that we got the Master, albeit Eric Roberts, it could have been worse, but it could have been a lot better. At least we got Paul McGann out of it, who was great.
Yeah, and I kind of, I don't want to say blamed him, but I had kind of written him off because of that made-for-TV movie that they did, which I didn't hate, but I didn't really like it either. And I went back and rewatched it when I put out my concept album, just because I had to write a song for the Eighth Doctor, and that's the only thing that exists. So, but when for the 50th anniversary, when they brought back McGann for, what was that, the Night of the Doctor, that little short. That was fantastic.
It was.
And I thought, wow, this guy he really was given, the short straw for his story, because I mean, he could have done it. He could have been a fantastic Doctor. Mm-hmm. And I've heard good things about the audiobooks that he's done, but I haven't listened to any of them.
I've listened to a couple, and it's just not. I guess I'm just, that type of drama just doesn't really play. Well, the biggest thing is, when am I going to listen to this? I mean, I don't have time to just sit down for 90 minutes and listen to something. I used to commute 2 hours a day in my car, and I listened to a lot of stuff then, and that's when I listened to a lot of them. But now I commute like 25 minutes a day.
See, my commute's 2.5 hours, so yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Pick up some Big Finish audios and run through 80,000 Paul McGann stories. Yeah. I thought he was good in the TV movie. I like the TV movie less every time I watch it. I loved it when it came out. I loved the interior of the TARDIS, that this sort of wood Gothic TARDIS. I thought that was gorgeous. I thought Paul McGann was a good Doctor. And it's just the plot was nonsensical, And
Yeah.
from what I understand, a lot of that was because it went through so many drafts, and it was written by a committee, basically.
Yeah, that happens all the time, especially with Americanizing anything or
Mhm.
updating and rebooting anything. I mean, look what's
Yeah.
happening with the Wonder Woman movie, if that's ever going to happen.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's just a nightmare, and it came out in ways that were really, really frustrating in that movie because I'm sure you and the listeners who've seen it remember the whole "I'm half human" thing.
Yeah, which I
Um,
still have blocked out of my brain and refuse to accept.
and the only reason it's in there, and I didn't really, I read more about Doctor Who than actual Doctor Who stuff. I love the behind the scenes production history things, and that was a script left over from one of the earlier versions where the Doctor was going to look for his lost father because his father had married an Earth woman, and that was the Doctor's mother. And so this was a plot point in a previous version, but it was so sloppily done that they just kept it in for some reason.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's so it was just it was, and from what I understand, it was filmed very, very quickly. I mean, by the time they got a script, they didn't have much time, and to get everybody's schedules lined up, it was a rush job. It had a big budget, but it was a rush, and then the ratings in the States were not what it needed to go to a series, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, that's for the best. I would definitely say.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking here.
Yeah.
Doctor Who would be, three guys and a goldfish in their basement talking about that weird old show. And it wouldn't be a phenomenon where I can go to a mall in the American Midwest and go to FYE or any other music store, and there's an entire section of Doctor Who merchandise.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd see the day.
Yeah, see, I remember the days, where I'd go to a convention, like, Icon in Long Island was my first convention, and that started as a dedicated Doctor Who convention.
Mhm.
And by the 90s, there was hardly any Doctor Who material there because
Yeah.
the show had been off the air and there was nothing for them to do. And it was really depressing.
Apart from videotapes, which were few and far between in the States, I used to get really jealous reading Doctor Who magazine and all of these, videotapes that were coming out every month of stuff that my PBS station didn't show because they usually didn't show the black and white stuff, because I guess fewer people watched it. So Hartnell and Troughton, I had to wait a long time to see a lot of that, but they were expensive, like $20 for a 4-episode story on this horrible VHS. And I actually I was trying to save up my money to get a PAL TV and video player so I could buy tapes from Britain to watch them before I realized that was incredibly stupid. But it was, and the biggest thing that they had going were the New Adventures, the original novels, which I loved. I always tell people and say, well, who's your doctor? And I say Sylvester McCoy from the novels, because that's my era of the show. That's when that was the new Doctor Who that was being produced when I was a young fan, and so I've read just about all of them, then sold them on eBay for gas money when I was in grad school, and have slowly and expensively been trying to rebuild my collection. Occasionally, I'll get to one of the half-price books chains, and I was at one in Indianapolis back in October, and they had about 50 New Adventures just on the shelf, and they're selling them for $3 a piece. And I was like, I wish I could remember which ones I owned. Oh, screw it, I'll just buy them all,
Yeah.
So, I come home and my wife's like, how's the conference? And I was like, look at all these Doctor Who books I bought. And it's like, why are we sending you to these things? But I'm like, I don't know, Doctor Who books. So they're by the end of the 90s, it was just, it was a wasteland.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's hear something else from your CD. Pick another one, Devo.
Pick another one. We're probably leading into discussing the new series, so why don't we do Bad Wolf, which is my Ninth
right.
Doctor song, which features my daughter, who was 9 at the time of the recording, singing.
Nice. All right. So this is Devo Spice with Bad Wolf off his CD entitled
I Am the Doctor.
Big bad wolf. Big bad wolf. Big bad wolf. Big bad wolf. We're Snooki is a thing. Big bad wolf. Big bad wolf. Big bad wolf. Big bad wolf. I see that you still can't quite control it right. Returning Rose a full year after a 12-hour flight. If you can't return a guest to her time at her behest, for her sake, maybe you should go retake your driving test. You always did want to grab the TARDIS by the reins and control it like a child with a pair of Great Danes, and it caused you great pains through you all of her creation. That won't exactly make for an ideal vacation. So what's the story? You're the last of your kind. The Daleks are gone, the Time Lords are confined in a time-locked war out of the main time stream. One question, what does that even mean? I deserve a better explanation than that. I defended the show from never-ending attacks. After 900 years, it should be me you were thanking. Remember, you are not too old for a spanking. Big bad wolf. Big bad wolf. Big bad wolf. Big bad wolf. You didn't call, you didn't write during all that time. I didn't know if you were dead or had become a street mime. Not knowing what was going on really was the hardest, but I see you had time to remodel the TARDIS. All we got was a crappy movie from Fox, a half-hearted attempt for our two-hearted docs. It was nothing like the stories that had been so glorious, from here to Raxacorico, Falipatorius. During that time, we couldn't find any mentions. There was almost nothing Doctor Who related at conventions, but fans would still gather rather than let it die. And for a 40 on the curve for episodes gone by. But now the Who Fans Anonymous meeting can adjourn. He says, run. The prodigal son has returned, and the fans can hardly wait to see the Daleks attack. I can't tell you how great it feels to have you back. Big bad wolf. 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 Big bad wolf.
All right, that was Devo Spice with Bad Wolf. And the artwork on this, you have a lot of drawings you did inside of it as you were, I assume, growing up.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I am an artist. I'm a classically trained illustrator, have a degree in illustration and whatnot. And but when I was a kid, I want to say it was all in one night, but it may not have been. I did all of these portraits of like the first 5 Doctors, because that's all there were at the time. And then I did the Master, and I did a Dalek, and then I did the Brigadier. And so then we started going to these conventions, and some of these actors started showing up. So I actually have, the drawing of John Pertwee that I did when I was 10 years old is autographed by John Pertwee.
Nice.
And I have the drawing of the Brigadier is autographed by the Brigadier. And, so it's one part of me is like, God, I could do so much better drawing now. But at the same time, I'll never have it autographed if I do a better drawing now. So.
All right. And before we get into the new series, back when it first started, weren't there a couple of movies that stood outside of the series as well?
Yes, with Peter Cushing as the Doctor.
Yes.
Or, excuse me, with Peter Cushing as Doctor Who. It was the only time that characters ever introduced himself as Doctor Who.
Yeah, those were weird.
They were very weird.
They were good. I mean, one of them, the first one was sort of a cinematic remake of the first Dalek serial, and the second one was a sort of similar remake of Dalek Invasion of Earth. But they were very strange. They're fun, but they don't quite fit anywhere.
Yeah.
If
Well, he was a human doctor in it,
right,
wasn't he?
right.
He was
just
human. Susan, I think, was still his granddaughter, but there was something else, like Ian was her brother or something.
What it was at least in the first one. In the first one, it was silly old Doctor Who, the inventor who invents the TARDIS, and he has 2 granddaughters, Barbara and Susan.
That's right.
And Ian was Barbara's boyfriend.
That's it. Yeah.
Who ends up and then in the in Dalek Invasion Earth, it's a I forget the character's name. Tom. he's a cop, and it's Bernard Cribbins. It's Donna Noble's grandpa. Um,
Oh,
so he's in. He's got the distinction, if you want to call it that, of having been in both. But if any of you guys out there remember Mystery Science Theater 3000,
Mhm.
some of the guys from that are doing this Riff Tracks company now, and they've done the Mystery Science Theater riffing treatment on the two Peter Cushing movies, and you can buy them at their site.
nice.
Oh, that's
And they're pretty funny. There's lots of weird sort of fanish in jokes that kind of surprised me. So those are pretty funny. But yeah, those sort of existed outside of Doctor Who reality. It's
now.
strange.
Did the BBC have anything to do with them?
I have no idea.
Not production wise, apart from licensing, from licensing the stuff. They saw it as a way to to make some money and get some exposure for the series. It was, and of course, Terry Nation saw it as a chance to launch the Daleks, especially in America. He spent most of the '60s trying to launch something in America. A Daleks-only TV show, a TV show about Daleks and humans who were fighting the Daleks, basically clinging to that little bit of, intellectual property he'd managed to hang on to. And
We should mention copyright works a little different in the UK.
Yes.
When you write an episode of Doctor Who, if you invent a monster, you own that monster.
Right.
As the writer own the rights to that monster, and the BBC cannot use it again unless they license it from you. So
Wow.
Terry Nation owns the Daleks and always will, as far as I understand. So every time there's a Dalek episode on TV, him or his estate gets, whatever.
Yeah, it's changed a little bit since then. They've got some agreements where writers sort of assign the rights to the BBC as one of the conditions of working there. But it was the same thing with Mervyn Haseman and Henry Lincoln when they created the Great Intelligence and the Yeti for those Troughton stories. And also they got money for every time the Brigadier showed up for a
really?
very long time, because he was in the Web of Fear, which was a story written by those guys. And also, Derek Sherwin, who was the producer in the 1960s, claims he invented UNIT and should be getting money for that, and keeps threatening to take the BBC to court. There's an interview in the last issue of Doctor Who magazine with him where he gets really angry about it, and his recollection of events doesn't match up with almost anything I've ever written or read, so it's really weird. I think there's some borderline slander in there against some other production people, but yeah, in general, the way it worked was, Terry Nation owned the Daleks, and Ray Cusick, who designed what the Daleks looked like, gets nothing because he was a BBC staff employee working in the special effects department. So his work on it was just, part of his job. He doesn't have any ownership. Terry Nation, who wrote the story and had the origin for it, but visually didn't. There were some notes about what they might look like that ended up. I think that they move like Russian dancers is what he said, or something like that. And so he's like, well, I invented the whole thing, and the guy who actually,
No Russian dance I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know but he's held on to that, and his estate is held on to that, and they still get his estate still gets a say in how the Daleks are used. So they have they can say, no, we don't like that. They aren't looking strong enough. We don't like that characterization. This plot's dumb, something like that. So he has a lot of power.
Interesting. All right. So how did this new series come about?
The only thing I heard about, how you probably know more about it than I do, Aaron, but the only way I heard it come about was I had heard that somebody new came into the BBC and decided that Doctor Who needed to come back. And that was pretty much all I heard. And I was like, okay, well, if the BBC wants Doctor Who back, maybe Doctor Who will actually come back. And I got all excited.
Yeah, Lorraine Heggessy became the, I think, head of drama or head of series or something like that. And she wanted two things. And one of them was Doctor Who, and the other was Russell T Davies writing a series or two or three for the BBC, because he was doing really good business with some of the non-BBC networks in Britain. And one of his conditions for working for the BBC, from what I've read, was he wanted to do Doctor Who. And he'd come up with something a few years before that ended up going nowhere, sort of a low-budget relaunch of Doctor Who, which would have sort of taken place on a quiet suburban street, and a child gets to know this old man who's lost his memory, who's the doctor at the end of the street. And so it would start out that way. And actually that sounds kind of very cool and
That
low key.
That's kind of interesting.
But whether or not that would have grabbed the attention of the public like what we got is hard to understand. But they brought it back, and he brought it back in a way that was the most un-Doctor Who, un-BBC 1990s, early 2000s way to do it. Everybody expected that if Doctor Who came back, it would be on like 9 p.m. on a Friday in one of the, quote, cult TV slots for science fiction shows. And Davies said, no, if Doctor Who comes back, it has to come back like it was when it was popular, not like it was when it was canceled. It has to come back as something the entire family and the entire country sits down and watches on a Saturday evening. And everybody told him, that's stupid. We watch reality shows on Saturdays. There's no such thing as family TV viewing anymore. We're all busted up into these little demographics. And he said, no, we can do this. And so they decided to go with this and find an excellent actor and an actress who was excellent, but nobody thought she would be. She was sort of the
Dude,
American.
I was so afraid of what
I know.
Rose was going to be, because when they announced the casting, they announced Christopher Eccleston as the Doctor, and the only thing I knew him from was 28 Days Later, and I was like, okay, sure. And then I was at a convention, and somebody had described Billie Piper to me as England's version of Britney Spears.
Yep,
and
exactly.
I went, oh dear God, no.
Yeah.
Because all I was picturing was like the Doctor fighting in sync,
Right. Right. And she ended up being just incredible.
Yeah, she was amazing.
And it was really, really good. And the ratings came in for that premiere episode, and they far exceeded what they thought they would get. And then the ratings kept up the whole season. It was incredible.
And it won people over on this side of the Atlantic as well pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the biggest surprise.
It was to me. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a lot of question at the time about whether or not it would even air in the United States. Or when it would air, because they had a hard time figuring out where this was going to be, because BBC America wasn't really up and running yet. And when it was running, there were a lot of cable systems that didn't have it, or it was a premium channel, sort of on the the second or third tier.
Yeah.
So I think the first season, it was on Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah, it aired on
Yeah.
Sci-Fi.
And I remember being terrified we weren't going to see it. So when the first episode, when Rose leaked out onto the internet, a couple weeks before the premiere, I think the statute of limitations is up. I downloaded that sucker.
Oh yeah, so did I. I still have
had-
the CD I burned it onto.
Me too. It was a VCD format or something like that.
Yeah.
And I had a DVD player that would play DivX files, so I burned the DivX file to a disk. But yeah, I was like, there's no way I'm not watching this. Now I will say I did not try to find the leaked episodes of the most recent series that came out. I did not check those out, but it was tempting. It's a little tempting, mostly because I love Peter Capaldi and other stuff, so I was really excited.
And what do you think of the new Doctors? Have they held up to the old Doctors? Are they better than the old Doctors?
I think it depends on which one you're talking about. I think this is just my opinion. I loved Christopher Eccleston. I really liked David Tennant until the point where I got tired of David Tennant. I was okay with Matt Smith until the 50th anniversary special, when I was reminded of just how good David Tennant was. And I love Peter Capaldi. I think Peter Capaldi is my favorite new series Doctor. It had always been Eccleston, but Peter Capaldi is really good, I think.
Yeah, I'm
What about you,
kind of in the
Devo?
same boat. I thought Eccleston was fantastic as the Doctor, absolutely amazing, and I was really upset that we only got one season out of
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
I really liked David Tennant. He's probably my favorite of the new season, the new series. Matt Smith, I like him as the Doctor. I don't have anything against him, but I always thought he was too young for the role,
Hmm.
and he was too frantic. He comes in and he talks really really fast, and he babbles a lot, and he waves his sonic screwdriver around like a magic wand, and then he runs away. And I
Yeah.
was like, dude, first of all, stand up straight. You're going to give yourself a bad back if you keep
Yep.
standing like that. And second, slow down, breathe,
Yeah.
So, but that leads into my song "I Am the Doctor" because that intentionally did that song really fast, kind of making fun of the way Matt Smith plays the role. So, and now Capaldi, I like him as the actor. I've been somewhat disappointed with the writing of this season because he's doing a lot of things that are undoctor-like or out of character, and it kind of takes me out of the series. But I think it did get better towards the end, and I do think that it's going to be good going forward. I just hope the ratings can continue, to survive it.
I read somewhere that the BBC America ratings are almost 30% higher on average this season than previous season.
Oh, really?
So that's very good.
Okay.
And there was an interview with Stephen Moffat where he mentioned something about that, and that the British ratings, that if you calculate people who watch online on the BBC iPlayer, the ratings, the overall viewing figures have not changed.
Okay, good.
The
Good.
way the ratings are calculated is a little more confusing now because of time shifting and all of that. But he didn't sound worried. Of course, he wouldn't, right? But I think I don't see it. I don't see it going away. I do.
Oh, no, I'm not
one
worried
f-
about it being
yeah.
canceled at any time soon, but
I'm always worried about it being canceled. It's Doctor Who. It was an institution for 26 years, and then it just wasn't there.
yeah.
We can't take anything for granted. We must be constantly anxious. I think one of the things I liked about this last season is I liked the difference in the characterization with the Doctor. I liked the harder edge. I liked the undoctorness, because if you look back at William Hartnell, he was completely undoctor-like in the way that we've come to see the Doctor. One thing I really liked about this season is that I was able to follow what was going on. There were little threads being placed here and there, and I could follow them. And during the Matt Smith years, I just got frustrated.
Those storylines were so confusing.
It was just so I'm still not sure what the hell the silence are about, and I don't care. And I liked.
I'm rewatching the show with my kids, and I'm like, "There's no way my kids are following what's going on here
Yeah.
because I don't know what the hell's going on most of the time."
It delved into science fiction TV territory, and it's that sort of thing that drove away viewers in the 80s. Was that these constant continuity references and trying to have to keep up, and the idea that if you sit down, if a viewer sits down and watches something and they don't know what's going on, they're not going to keep watching. And
Sure.
I worried about the series running into that. I like what they did with Clara this season. I think they made her into an actual character and not just a plot device like she was in the run up to the 50th anniversary, or what was it, the finale Impossible Girl thing where she went back through time and saved the Doctor. I liked that they one, I liked that they kept Clara because I think she's great, and two, I liked that they actually made something out of her. But I thought this season was good. There were a few clunkers. I thought Time Heist was lousy.
See, I enjoyed Time Heist. The one I thought was lousy was Robot of Sherwood. And I know that's
liked
kind of a
that.
divisive episode. I know some of my friends absolutely loved that episode. I sat there watching it with like this snarl on my face, going, "What the hell am I watching?"
I liked it for the the Dr. Robin dialogue.
See,
I
that's
thought
exactly
that was,
what I didn't like. I didn't like that they were the doctor was trying to show off to Clara that he is, the more important of the two or whatever.
Mhm.
And it just, that's one of the things for me that was very undoctor-like. That's not something the doctor would do, in my opinion.
Well,
I
it
can see that.
seems to me like this doctor is trying to find his bearings through this season.
Mhm.
Like he's been through so much that he's almost like they're intentionally making him undoctor-like as he tries to find out who he is.
Yeah, and I think I'm not, no spoilers here, but the season finale answered some of those questions, and we sort of get a resolution to that "Am I a good man?" question he asks in the first episode. I think my favorite episode of the whole season was probably "Listen." I thought that was very atmospheric and creepy and strange, and
Yeah, that was cool.
I just loved the notion of, and we saw some of this season. What's the doctor doing when he's alone? I mean, what's really going through this guy's head? And I think they went as far as they could with that without making the doctor, understandable, which he really shouldn't be in some cases. He is an alien, but I thought this season was good. But I also liked the second half of the last season. Okay, I'll be honest. I liked it once Amy and Rory were gone. I was just really tired of them. But the 11th Doctor Clara half season was. I loved the Ice Warriors episode.
We
I
just
thought
watched
the
that
Neil
with my
Gaiman
kids last
Cyberman
week.
episode was really good. It was fun.
Well, let's hear one more. Well, let's hear another song from your CD, and we'll come back and conclude this. So what should we play next?
Oh, I don't know. What do you want? Why don't you play the title track? We just finished talking about Matt Smith, so play the "I Am the Doctor" title track.
All right. So here's "I Am the Doctor" from Devo Spice.
Hello, I'm the Doctor. Just the Doctor, and this is my crew. How do you do? I'm just a madman with a box, big blue box, foxy and sexy, if you only knew. Yes, it's bigger on the inside. Ask Captain Jack, it's a great ride back in his mind. I reside in the TARDIS, home is where the heart is, and like Lisa Simpson, I can see you through time. I have been to the end of the universe and back again, then reverse course and we arrive back where we started in the TARDIS. Cause when people come with me, I really like to try to bring them back alive. So if you want to come and get your things, I'll take you where the sky sings. Tell your mom that your ring around the cell, or the things I can show you as I get to know you. But don't wait for me, cause that never ends well. I am the Doctor. I am the Doctor. Now answer me this. Are you my mommy? No, of course you're not. But what's the spot on your hands? I guess I always talk this fast. All my chatter doesn't matter. I'm the only one who really understands. You see, I've got a big head, a very big head, a very large head with a very big brain. And if you look deep into my eyes, the very old eyes, you might even see some little guys at the rain. That's what I do to survive on the day that I die. Cause it's what is inside that counts. I wonder if you missed it. At one point it never existed and still made the wedding unannounced. I've stopped aliens and demons in the end of everything, and it barely even shook me up. So if you think it crossing me, your loss it will be. I'm the Doctor. Look me up. I am the Doctor. I am the Doctor. Oh, the things I've seen make your skin turn green like a Silurian. I've seen angels move, and if you think you've seen one, don't look away or even blink. I've seen a Dalek sunbathe and let loose. I've seen a crack scarier than any plumber could produce. I've seen vampires that were actually scary, and no, they didn't sparkle like a dancing fairy. I've seen cat people and sentient trees, and I've seen the silence, but oh geez, I forget. What were we talking about? Alright, me. I wear a bow tie now. Bow ties are cool, but oh my, whatever happened to my fez? I know I tend to dive right inside the hive, but if you want to make it out alive, then you'll do what the doctor says. But why is everyone still going on about my name when they should be more concerned about the people made of plastic? After all, I rose by any other name would still be the bad wolf and still be fantastic. That's what my life is like with Cybermen and Centaurus, the glued in the head this month. Sure, there's danger and strife, but it's a marvelous life, and you can ride along beside me if you want. So tell me now, where do you want to go from here? How about a lovely little planet where we won't get injured? I had a thought, I think I ought to let Devo Spice play the Doctor so I could be a ginger. I've always wanted to be a ginger. I am the Doctor.
And that was I Am the Doctor from Devo Spice off his latest CD, which is entitled, I believe I Am the Doctor.
Yep.
So, Devo, where can people get the CD?
You can get it at my website, devospice.com, or you can get it from Bandcamp at devospice.bandcamp.com. It's also up on the FUMP, the Funny Music Project, at thefump.com, thefump.com. It's not hard to find. It's on iTunes. It's on Amazon. I think it's on Spotify. It's everywhere.
Okay, all right. And Aaron, where can people get your books?
Easiest place where I have all sorts of links to everything is my website, AJ Gulyas. That's AJGULYAS.com. And if you type Aaron Gulyas into Amazon, all my stuff will come up there as well.
Now, do you think with this new series that they're kind of struggling to stay family oriented while appeasing an older audience as well?
It hadn't occurred to me, so I don't know. I haven't heard anything from behind the scenes that they're trying to, they're struggling with that. The show always seemed to be family approachable, if not always family friendly. I mean, when the show came back, my daughter, who was like 2.5 at the time, walked into the room during the what was the name of that episode? The one with Giles from Buffy and the big bat creatures in the school.
School Reunion.
School Reunion. So my 2.5-year-old daughter walks into the room while the giant bats are running down the side of the walls, and she just kind of froze and freaked out. So it's not always perfect for all ages, but it's. My kids are watching it now and loving it. I mean, my youngest, who is just turned 7 now, he was really scared of the silence every time they were on screen. He like turned and hid his eyes, which is understandable. Those things are kind of creepy. But I don't know that they're having a problem with it. Have you heard it? Have you heard something?
Well, I've seen a few articles talking about how maybe Doctor Who is getting too scary for younger viewers.
Which I find interesting, because if you read interviews with people who've been involved in making it, even back in the 80s, the thing everybody sort of remembers about Doctor Who is how awesome it was to be scared by it when they were kids.
Yeah.
It's always scared children. That's sort of part of its thing. Russell T Davies, I read an interview with him once, and he said that one of the things that was missing from that first season when he brought back the Doctor was something scary, until Stephen Moffat came in with The Empty Child, with the little gas mask, "Are you my mummy?"
Oh God,
kids.
yeah.
and then he realized, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot how good scary this could be for little kids. So I think I think if they come under criticism for it, falling back on the old "this is what Doctor Who has always done" is good. I did read that they got some complaints, and the BBC actually issued a statement about the first half of the season finale, about the sort of what happens after you die and you still feel pain stuff. They did get some complaints about that, but the production office pointed out that the Doctor clearly denounced that as being not real and not true. So I don't know. I guess they sort of had to defend their sort of existential presentation of the nature of death, which is just sort of
It's funny
absurd,
what people will complain about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. But I think as long as it's aimed at a family audience, they're going to have to walk the line of being scary and suspenseful without being sort of Walking Dead levels of horror. And
well, they can probably get away with that, because I heard an interview with an author some time ago who writes horror stories aimed at children, and he does some really scary, horrific things with monsters and demons and stuff. And he says he said the line for him was, if it can be real, he won't do it. So
right.
Vampires, werewolves, demons, monsters, those are all fair game. Some kid shooting up a school is not something he will write about.
Exactly.
Even though that could be 10 times scarier, he will not write that, because it could really happen. So
exactly,
if Doctor Who stays along those same lines, a kid with a gas mask as part of his face is not, it's scary, but it's not something that will ever really happen.
That's exactly right. And in the 70s, when the show got in trouble with the National Viewers and Listeners Association in Britain, what got the producer Philip Hinchcliffe in the most trouble out of anything was not, the hideous creatures in the brain of Morbius or anything like that. It was that scene in The Deadly Assassin, which we can't see now because they edited it after the first broadcast, and it that clip doesn't exist. The cliffhanger is the doctor being drowned, and
Hmm.
and that was too much because, like you said, that's real. That's you're not hitting somebody with a laser, or dropping a clearly styrofoam rock on their head. It was Tom Baker underwater being held down, and that's too far. And I think that's a good line to draw.
And we were talking earlier about him being like the Obi-Wan type of character, but I also think there's a lot of trickster into the Doctor.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean that seems to really be more. He's more the trickster than the wise man at times.
It depends. It depends on the incarnation. I think I think with your William Hartnell and your John Pertwee, clearly a sort of wise man. With your Patrick Troughton, your Tom Baker, your Sylvester McCoy, definitely a lot of sort of mythic trickster stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
aspects. Yeah.
and I think Tenet fell into that category nicely too.
Hmm.
A little bit, yeah. That's one thing I always liked about Troughton's Doctor was that he pretended he wasn't the smartest person in the room, and
Right.
he would let the people he was up against kind of make their mistakes, and he would capitalize on that. It was great.
And they all seem to do that to some degree. They
Yeah.
they all seem to hold that sort of thing going. I mean, even the latest Doctor, even though he's acting like he doesn't know what's going on, he clearly does to some degree.
Yes. Yes. And when and that can go too far the other way too. I mean, some of the Sylvester McCoy stories where it gets to the end and it turns out that the doctor has been manipulating everything all along, and ha ha ha. It once is interesting. Two or three times it gets annoying when it happens.
Yeah.
2 or 3 times a season. Then it's like, oh wow, yes, it was a secret Time Lord weapon that you manipulated in your enemy into using on himself. Okay, we saw this 2 weeks ago. um, but yeah, I mean, it's very much that. I don't want to say judo, but sort of redirecting the enemy's force in a way that that hurts the enemy. I think that's something the Doctor's character does very well.
What do you think made this reboot take off like it did?
Oh,
There was definitely pent up demand.
Yeah.
A lot of the old time Doctor Who fans were clamoring for it. That plus the fact that they did it right. They
Yes.
didn't
Yeah.
give us another Paul McGann made for TV movie that was kind of half assed. They went all out and they did it right, and they put out a damn fine product.
I think one of the aspects of making that damn fine product, and I think for me the biggest difference from the Paul McGann movie, is that you can sit down, show somebody that episode Rose, who has never even heard of Doctor Who before, and it's a fun, compelling piece of television.
Yeah.
There's no reference to anything that had come before. You don't need to know anything about Doctor Who. And you're not going to make a successful show aiming it at the people who were fans of it when it was canceled, in the case of the McGann movie, 7 years before. And that McGann movie had so many little references to stuff that didn't even matter. Oh, here's a shot of Tom Baker's scarf, and we spend 15 seconds looking at the scarf for no reason other than that it's Tom Baker's scarf. Rose didn't do anything like that. And that whole first season, what you just learn little bits and pieces about the Doctor and the Daleks, and you start off with one Dalek and you're shown what it can do. So then in the finale, when you've got 1,000 of them, you're really freaked out, even if you don't know anything about about the Daleks. I mean, longtime hardcore fans were, sort of geeking out about the fact that the Dalek saucers looked just like the ones in the comic strip back in the 60s. Everybody else is just like, wow, that thing that was really scary in Utah 6 weeks ago is now, back and massive. I think they aimed it at a television audience they created a good show that didn't require 30 years of fan lore to understand.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. What is, like, when you think Doctor Who, what comes to mind to you?
My entire life. I mean, I've been watching the show for literally over 30 years now, and it's been something that's been a big part of my life since I was 10 years old, give or take.
All right. Aaron?
I share that sentiment. It's something. I mean, I can go 6 months without watching any Doctor Who, but then sometimes the urge will hit, and I will just bring down my stack of DVDs from the room where I keep my DVDs and just sort of stack them up and say to the family, I'm watching Doctor Who today. And it's just like, I'm watching all of Hartnell's second season, so get out if you don't want to see it. I'm watching the Romans now. And so it's just something that's always there, and it's something that's very, very nostalgic for me. I mean, I can remember talking about these stories with friends and everything, and it's been part of my life, and maybe an unhealthily large part of my life sometimes, but it's always been there, and now I wrote chapters in scholarly books with people who study these things for a living, and what am I doing? I'm writing about Doctor Who, just like I always wanted to do when I was in high school and college, and now I've been able to. So it's great, and I'm sure you feel the same way. You're able to use your creative talents in a way that feeds on this show that you've loved for so long, and it's an amazing thing to be able to do.
Yeah, the concept album was really a labor of love, and it was something that I needed to do whether or not any of my fans wanted to buy it.
Mm-hmm. And the thing about Doctor Who, too, is it stands out from everything else on television. It's not like other sci-fi. It's not like anything else that's ever been done in the entire time that it's run.
Right.
And that's one hell of an accomplishment.
It is. When I think of Doctor Who, it's endless variety. It's not a ship show. It's not just an alien invasion show. It's not just science fiction. It's anything it wants to be. And I hope the production team remembers that they don't need to pigeonhole the series into one particular thing. It can do anything in the universe.
Fair enough. All right, one more time. Where can people find your stuff? Let's start with Aaron.
ajgulyas.com. That's AJGULYAS.com.
And you have one book out you've published in Doctor Who.
Yes. And some chapters coming up in, one chapter that's out, and another one that, depending on the vagaries of publishing and the editors, will be out sometime between now and the end of time.
And you also have a couple other books that we've had you on Where Did the Road Go before.
Yeah.
Talking about your latest book, The Chaos Conundrum. And you have another one before that on the contactee movement.
On the contactees. And I am just now putting the finishing touches, maybe tonight if I get ambitious, on a new book I'm sending off to my editor at Rowman and Littlefield on conspiracy and paranormal themed television science fiction in the 90s, and its relation to the wider paranormal conspiracy theory culture at the time. So, man, I've been watching a lot of terrible TV the last year. Terrible stuff.
And Devo, go on.
Dark Skies. I had to sit down and watch Dark Skies again, and that about killed me.
Devo, your stuff is available where?
I'm at devospice.com. I'm on the Fump at thefump.com. All my stuff is on Bandcamp at devospice.bandcamp.com. I do want to mention I have a new album coming out on December 2nd called Herp Derp You Don't Stirp. Won't be any Doctor Who material on it, but it will be a full album of comedy rap, and I'm doing a Bandcamp rush on December 2nd. So if you buy the album on Bandcamp on December 2nd, 2014, in case anyone's listening in the far future, then I'll give you a bonus album, another complete album, absolutely free, called Ermagerd Burnish Turks. So
It's great pronunciation on that. That's
yeah, well, that's how it's spelled. So.
yes.
And that's DEVOSPICE.
Correct.
For Devo Spice. All right. Well, I thank both of you. This has been fascinating. And what should we end with off your CD?
Let's see. We already played that. Do a Fandom Paradise, my Tom Baker song.
Okay. And I guess that's it. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Here's
guys.
Devo Spice.
I've been watching the show since before I could talk, and the more I would watch, the more the Doctor would rock. I even heard my first word was exterminate, and I had a British accent until I was 8. Now I'm all grown and I'm out on my own, and I got a car loan, so about it I moan. But I've got my own home and I've decked it out right, like a Time Lord aboard my own TARDIS in flight. I start my day in a way that nothing can go wrong. Alarm clocks rocking out my own theme song. I wash my body and hair, then I put on a pair of my tailor-made suede Gallifreyan underwear. People come to visit and ask, is it Halloween or a dream? And I'm always like, what do you mean? I'm creating a scene with the Doctor and Sarah squaring off against the androids of Terra. Paradise, this is fandom paradise. I look around and say very nice. It's a personal vice, but it's paradise. Paradise, this is fandom paradise. Spend no expense and pay any price. Ain't no crap from IKEA, this is paradise. I painted the door of my bathroom bright blue. I'll invite you, if you're a fan, to walk right through. It looks like the TARDIS, and I don't mean to boast, but my toilet is bigger on the inside than most. I travel around town, a pretty girl by my side. She's my very own companion, along for the ride through very scary scenarios. She's lucky she survives as we carpool to work. Sometimes she even drives. The morning isn't bad, the rush hour is the hardest. My heart is set on one day commuting in the TARDIS. I could totally fly it. I'm sure the console isn't any more complex than my remote control. When I get to work, I'm in my own little world. My cubicle is decorated with the time tunnel swirls, but I'm suspicious of my boss because he's foreign, short, stocky, and bald. I think he might be some Taran. Paradise, this is fandom paradise. I look around and say very nice. It's a personal vice, but it's paradise. Paradise, this is fandom paradise. Spend no expense and pay any price. Ain't no crap from IKEA, this is paradise. My girlfriend says it stinks and she thinks it's a disaster. She mocked the TARDIS toilet and she balked when I asked her to knit me a really long scarf. It was no use, but you know what? She said she would knit me a long noose. She won't watch without a bunch of tequila, and she flat out refused to dress up like Leela, saying she wants no part of my nerdy perversion. I can't wait till she regenerates into a newer version. My kitchen looks like the creature from the pit escaped. My salt and pepper shakers are Dalek shaped, and they skillfully exterminate the blandness from my food. But my coffee making robot has a bad attitude. I've written lots of fan fiction featuring me, along with every companion and a creature or three. And soon I hope to film one of the scripts I penned with Mary Tam, who is a very close personal friend. She just doesn't know it yet. I got bad asthma that attacks when I run, so I like to make my lungs go. I named my dog K9 and he could run a lot faster. I just can't get him to talk or call me master. I perform rituals to try to raise crawl. I figure go big or don't do it at all, cause if you're gonna be nerdy, might as well do it right. Now everybody wang chang tonight. Paradise, this is fandom paradise. I look around and say very nice. It's a personal vice, but it's paradise. Paradise, this is fandom paradise. Spend no expense and pay any price. Ain't no crap from IKEA, this is paradise. Paradise, this is fandom paradise. I've dealt with giant rats once or twice, but that won't bother me, this is paradise.
Spice, build yourself a little corner of paradise.
Okay, so I was thinking maybe we could redecorate the dining room so the table looks like the TARDIS console, and we can make a chandelier that looks like the center of the console and make it go up and down when you turn the light switch on. What do you think?
I think I just came up with a new place I can shove your sonic screwdriver. Get over here.
No, wait, no, honey, no, wait.